Jake Morrison sat in the back row of the weapons theory classroom, trying to make sense of the holographic display floating above Commander Vextai's desk. The reptilian instructor's yellow eyes scanned the room as he spoke about energy displacement theories and quantum projectile systems. Jake understood maybe half of what the alien was saying. The classroom held 24 cadets from 6 different species. Most of them came from worlds where technology had advanced far beyond anything humans had achieved. Jake often felt like a caveman trying to understand rocket science, which wasn't far from the truth. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Defense Academy 5 years ago, making them the newest and most primitive members. "Today we will test your understanding," Commander Vextai announced, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. Not through written examination, but through practical application. Jake straightened in his seat. Practical tests were usually better for him than the theoretical ones. He could build things with his hands, even if he couldn't always explain the advanced science behind them. Thrix, the mantis-like Manthari cadet, clicked his mandibles together, and what Jake had learned was excitement. The insectoid alien always scored highest on every test. His species had been building advanced weapons for over 10,000 years. "You will create a weapon," the commander continued, "using only materials available in this classroom. You have 2 hours. The weapon must be functional and demonstrate clear offensive capability." Jake looked around the room. The classroom was filled with standard academy equipment. Holographic projectors, data tablets, polymer chairs, metal tables, and various electronic components lined the walls. Most of his classmates were already eyeing the advanced technology. Zolara, the crystalline Etherian, began examining the holographic projectors immediately. Her species could manipulate energy frequencies through their natural crystal formations. Jake had seen her create amazing light displays during previous exercises. Kira Voss, another human cadet and Jake's only real friend at the academy, moved toward the magnetic components used for the floating displays. She came from a military family and had studied engineering before joining the academy. She was much smarter than Jake when it came to understanding alien technology. "Begin," Commander Vextai said. The room erupted into motion. Alien cadets rushed toward different sections of equipment. Thrix began dismantling a data projector with surgical precision. His 4 arms worked independently, each one handling different components. Solara placed her hands on a holographic emitter, and immediately the device began glowing with inner light. Jake remained seated, watching. This was something his father had taught him during hunting trips back on Earth. "Always observe before you act, son. Understand your environment first." The other cadets were thinking like their species always did. They looked for the most advanced components, the highest technology available. That made sense for them. Their civilizations had always moved forward by building better and more complex tools. But Jake came from a different background. His family had lived in rural Montana, where his grandfather had taught him to hunt with traditional weapons alongside modern ones. "Technology fails," the old man used to say. "But physics never does." Jake stood up and began walking around the room slowly. He ignored the electronic components that had captured everyone else's attention. Instead, he looked at the basic structural elements. The chairs were made from a flexible polymer that could bend without breaking. The tables had metal frames with adjustable legs. The wall panels contained long strips of reinforced material. A plan began forming in his mind. He started with one of the chairs, carefully removing the backrest. The polymer was strong but flexible, perfect for what he needed. Next, he moved to a table and began unscrewing one of the metal support rods. It was about 1 meter long and had a slight curve to it. "What is the human doing?" he heard one of the alien cadets whisper to another. Jake ignored them and continued working. From the wall panels, he carefully extracted several long strips of reinforced material. These would work perfectly for his purposes. He tested their flexibility and strength, bending them until he found ones with the right properties. The other cadets were making impressive progress. Thrix had assembled what looked like a miniature plasma cannon, using components from 3 different devices. Sparks of energy danced between his claws as he fine-tuned the weapon's power settings. Solara had transformed the holographic emitter into something resembling an energy sword. The blade hummed with contained power and could probably cut through solid metal. Kira was building some kind of magnetic accelerator. Jake could see coils of wire and focusing elements arranged in a tube-like configuration. She caught his eye and nodded approvingly when she saw him working, though she looked puzzled by his choice of materials. Jake continued his methodical construction. He used small metal pieces as tools to shape and adjust his materials. The work required patience and precision, skills he had learned from years of crafting things by hand. Some of the alien cadets began watching him with curiosity. What he was building didn't look like any weapon they recognized. It seemed too simple, too primitive for a military academy that trained the galaxy's elite forces. "Instructor," called out Nex, a tall Zephyrian cadet with green scales. "The human appears to be making some kind of ceremonial object. Should this count as a weapon?" Commander Vexatai approached Jake's workstation. His reptilian eyes studied the construction carefully. Jake continued working, not looking up. "What are you building, Cadet Morrison?" the commander asked. "A weapon, sir," Jake replied simply, testing the tension on one of the curved elements. "It does not appear to incorporate any advanced technology." "No, sir, it doesn't. How do you expect such a primitive construction to compete with proper military weapons?" Jake finally looked up at his instructor. "Permission to demonstrate when ready, sir?" Commander Vextai's expression was unreadable. "Very well. Continue." The commander moved away, but Jake noticed he kept glancing back at the workstation. Other instructors who had come to observe the exercise also seemed puzzled by Jake's approach. With 30 minutes remaining, most of the alien cadets were putting finishing touches on their weapons. Jake was still working steadily, carefully crafting what looked to everyone else like an ancient relic. The room filled with excited chatter as cadets tested their creations and prepared for the demonstration phase. Energy hummed, metal gleamed, and complex displays showed readouts that Jake couldn't begin to understand. But he wasn't worried. He had learned something during his time at the academy that many of his advanced classmates seemed to have forgotten. Sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones. Jake carefully bent the metal rod he had taken from the table frame. The alloy was stronger than wood, but had similar flexibility when heated slightly with friction. He rubbed the metal against the rough edge of a wall panel until it warmed up, then slowly curved it into the shape he needed. Around him, the other cadets worked with intense focus on their high-tech weapons. The sounds of their construction filled the room. Electronic beeping, energy crackling, and the whir of small motors echoed off the walls. Thrix had nearly completed his plasma weapon. The insectoid cadet's forearms moved in perfect coordination as he adjusted tiny components inside the device. Each movement was precise and calculated. His species had evolved for exactly this kind of detailed technical work. The weapon looked like something that belonged in a museum of advanced civilization. Plasma containment at 92%. Thrix muttered to himself, reading numbers from a small display. Energy output should be sufficient for level 7 targets. 2 workstations over, Solara held her crystal hands against the modified holographic emitter. Her entire body glowed with a soft blue light as she channeled energy through her natural formations into the device. The alien technology responded to her touch, reshaping itself into something completely new. "Beautiful work," Commander Vextai said as he passed her station. "Your species' natural connection to energy manipulation never ceases to amaze." Solara's crystalline features brightened with pride. "Thank you, Commander. I have increased the coherence beam by 40% over standard emitter specifications." Even Kira was making impressive progress with her magnetic accelerator. She had wound copper wire into precise coils and arranged them along a metal tube. When she tested the magnetic field, small metal objects jumped toward the barrel from several inches away. The acceleration should give projectiles enough velocity to penetrate light armor, she explained to another human cadet who had stopped to watch. Jake continued his own work, ignoring the impressive displays around him. He had shaped the metal, wrought into a curve, and was now working on the string mechanism. The reinforced strips from the wall panels were perfect for this. They had the right combination of strength and elasticity. He tested the tension carefully. Too loose and the weapon would be useless. Too tight and the materials might snap under pressure. Finding the right balance required patience and experience, both things his grandfather had taught him during long afternoons in the Montana wilderness. "Jake, what exactly are you making?" Kira asked during a brief break from her own construction. She walked over to his workstation, wiping sweat from her forehead. "You'll see," Jake said with a small smile. How's your railgun coming along? Magnetic accelerator, she corrected. And it's going well. Should be able to punch through most standard defensive barriers. She looked at his curved construction with obvious confusion. But seriously, what is that thing? An old solution to an old problem, Jake replied. Kira shook her head and returned to her own work. Jake could tell she was worried about him. The other human cadets had managed to build weapons that at least looked modern. Jake's creation appeared primitive even by Earth standards. Commander Vextai made another circuit around the room, stopping at each workstation to observe progress. When he reached Jake, the reptilian instructor studied the construction for a long moment. This appears to be some form of mechanical energy storage device, he said slowly. Yes, sir. But where is the projectile delivery system? The targeting computer? The power source? Jake held up several straight pieces he had carefully shaped from chair components. Projectiles, sir. No targeting computer needed. And the power source is... He demonstrated by pulling back on the string mechanism. Stored mechanical energy. The commander's yellow eyes blinked slowly. You are saying this weapon operates on pure mechanical principles? Yes, sir. Same physics that make all weapons work, just applied more directly. Interesting. Commander Vextai moved on, but Jake noticed he kept glancing back. With 1 hour remaining, the energy in the room reached a peak. Most cadets were finishing their weapons and beginning preliminary tests. Small bursts of energy, magnetic fields, and plasma discharges lit up various workstations as the alien students verified their creations worked properly. Jake was crafting his projectiles. Each one required careful attention to weight, balance, and aerodynamics. He sharpened some to points for penetration. Others he left blunt for impact damage. A few he shaped with wider heads for maximum energy transfer. The alien cadets had begun gathering around the most impressive weapons to admire each other's work. Thrix's plasma cannon could melt through metal plates. Solara's energy blade could slice cleanly through solid objects. Various other cadets had created sonic disruptors, gravity manipulators, and particle beam weapons. The human's construction looks like something from a primitive archaeological site. Jake heard one cadet whisper to another. Perhaps his species is not ready for advanced military training, another replied. My grandmother's species built more sophisticated weapons 10,000 years ago, a third added. Jake ignored the comments and continued working. He had heard similar things throughout his time at the academy. Being the newest species in the galactic community meant constantly proving that humans belonged here. Most of the time, that meant trying to catch up with technology that was centuries ahead of anything on Earth. But not today. Today, Jake was going to show them something different. He tested the string tension one final time and made a small adjustment. The weapon felt right in his hands. The balance was perfect, and the draw weight was exactly what he needed for the projectiles he had crafted. 10 minutes remaining, Commander Vextai announced. Jake used the time to prepare his projectiles carefully, arranging them for quick access during the demonstration. He had learned from his grandfather that preparation was just as important as skill when it came to effective weapon use. The other cadets made final adjustments to their high-tech creations. Energy readings were checked, power levels optimized, and targeting systems calibrated. The air hummed with electricity and contained power. Time, the commander called out. The construction phase was over. Now came the real test. Jake looked at his finished weapon and smiled slightly. It looked exactly like what it was. A tool that humans had been perfecting for over 60,000 years. The demonstration was about to begin. Commander Vextai activated the holographic target system, and 6 combat drones materialized in the center of the classroom. Each drone was the size of a basketball and protected by standard military-grade shields. They moved in random patterns, simulating enemy movements during actual combat situations. Each cadet will demonstrate their weapon's effectiveness against these targets, the commander announced. You will be evaluated on accuracy, penetration power, and tactical advantages. Who wishes to go first? Thrix immediately raised one of his forearms. I volunteer, Commander. The insectoid cadet stepped forward with his plasma cannon. The weapon looked impressive in his clawed hands, with energy conduits glowing along its barrel. He aimed carefully at the nearest drone. his compound eyes tracking its movement with mathematical precision. "Firing," Thrix announced. A bolt of superheated plasma shot from the weapon and struck the drone directly. The target's shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the energy, but the second blast overwhelmed them completely. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks and metal fragments. "Excellent work," Commander Vextai said, making notes on his data tablet. "Clean kill, minimal energy waste. Next." Zolara stepped forward with her energy blade. Unlike the projectile weapons, her creation required close combat engagement. The crystalline cadet moved with fluid grace, her body naturally glowing as she channeled power through the weapon. She approached one of the drones at high speed. The target's sensors detected her movement and began evasive maneuvers, but Zolara anticipated its pattern. Her energy blade sliced through the drone's shield matrix and cut the machine cleanly in half. "Impressive technique," the commander noted. "Effective against shielded targets." Next demonstration. One by one, the alien cadets showed off their creations. A Zephyrian cadet used a sonic disruptor that shattered drone components with focused sound waves. Another student demonstrated a gravity manipulator that crushed targets by increasing local gravitational fields. Each weapon represented advanced technology and sophisticated understanding of physics. Kira stepped forward with her magnetic accelerator. She had loaded it with metal projectiles salvaged from the classroom equipment. The weapon looked crude compared to the energy-based systems, but it functioned smoothly. "Firing sequence initiated," she announced, pulling the trigger. A metal slug shot from the barrel at tremendous velocity. It punched straight through a drone's shields and left a clean hole through the target's center. The drone sparked and fell to the floor, completely disabled. "Solid kinetic impact," Commander Vexitai observed approvingly. "Good penetration against defensive systems." "Well done, Cadet Voss." Jake watched his friend's success with genuine pride. Kira had always been clever with technology, and her weapon proved that humans could compete with alien engineering when they applied themselves. Finally, only Jake remained. The other cadets had destroyed or disabled 5 of the 6 combat drones using impressive displays of advanced weaponry. Now everyone turned to watch the human with his primitive-looking construction. Jake stepped forward, carrying his bow and the bundle of arrows he had crafted. Murmurs rippled through the group of watching cadets. Some pointed at his weapon with obvious confusion. Others whispered comments about human backwardness. "What exactly is that supposed to be?" asked next the green-scaled Zephyrian who had questioned Jake's work earlier. "It appears to be some form of manually operated projectile launcher," observed another cadet. "How quaint." Commander Vextai raised a clawed hand for silence. "Proceed with your demonstration, Cadet Morrison." Jake knocked one of his arrows and drew the bowstring back. The familiar motion felt natural after years of practice. He aimed at the remaining drone, which was hovering about 20 meters away, and moving in an unpredictable pattern. The room fell completely silent. Even the instructor stopped taking notes and watched with curious attention. Jake released the arrow. It flew through the air faster than most of the observers could track. The projectile struck the drone's shield at an angle, but instead of being deflected or absorbed like the energy weapons, it punched straight through the defensive barrier and embedded itself in the target's central processor. The drone immediately stopped moving and crashed to the floor. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the whispers started again, but this time they sounded different, confused rather than mocking. "How did it penetrate the shield?" Thrix asked, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "The defensive matrix should have deflected any physical projectile," Zolara added, her crystalline features showing obvious puzzlement. Commander Vextai approached the disabled drone and examined the arrow. "The shield systems are designed to stop energy weapons and high-velocity metallic projectiles," he said slowly. "This arrow appears to be composed of organic polymers and moves at a relatively low velocity. The shield matrix may not have recognized it as a threat." Jake knocked another arrow but didn't draw the string yet. "May I demonstrate additional capabilities, Commander?" "By all means." Jake pulled 3 more drones from storage and activated them with his data tablet. They immediately began moving in evasive patterns around the room. This time, Jake drew and fired in one smooth motion. The first arrow took down a drone on the left side of the room. Before the target hit the ground, Jake had already knocked, drawn, and released a second arrow at a drone moving behind the instructor's desk. The third arrow caught the final drone as it tried to escape toward the ceiling. All 3 targets were down in less than 5 seconds. The classroom erupted in excited chatter. Alien cadets surrounded the disabled drones, examining the arrows and discussing what they had witnessed. Several of them turned to stare at Jake with newfound respect. "Remarkable accuracy," Commander Vextai said, approaching Jake. "And that rate of fire is faster than most energy weapons can cycle between shots." "Thank you, Sir Sim, but how effective would this weapon be against armored targets? Or multiple opponents? What about range limitations?" Jake smiled and reached for his bundle of arrows. "Permission to show you different ammunition types, Commander?" The demonstration was just getting started. Jake separated his arrows into different groups on the nearest table. Each type had been carefully crafted for specific purposes, though they all looked similar to the alien observers. "These are penetrator arrows," he said, holding up one with a sharp, narrow point. "For armored targets." He selected another with a broader head. "These are for maximum energy transfer and stopping power." Finally, he showed them arrows with blunt, rounded tips. Non-lethal impact rounds for crowd control or training. Commander Vextai examined each arrow type with growing interest. "You crafted different ammunition for different tactical situations?" "Yes, sir. Same principle as having different settings on an energy weapon, just applied mechanically." The instructor activated the room's advanced target system. Heavy combat drones materialized, each one protected by military-grade armor plating in addition to energy shields. These targets were designed to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons and particle beams. "Demonstrate against hardened targets," Commander Vextai ordered. Jake selected a penetrator arrow and drew his bow. The armored drone began moving in complex, evasive patterns, much faster than the previous targets. Its shields glowed bright purple, indicating maximum defensive power. Jake tracked the target's movement for several seconds, learning its pattern. Then he led his shot slightly and released. The arrow struck the drone's shield array at precisely the angle Jake had calculated. Instead of being stopped or deflected, the projectile slipped through the energy matrix and hit the armor plating underneath. The sharp point punched through the metal and disabled the drone's main power coupling. Sparks flew as the heavily armored target crashed to the ground, completely disabled by a single shot. "Impossible," whispered Thrix. "That armor can withstand direct plasma cannon fire." Jake knocked another arrow. Different physics, different results. He demonstrated rapid firing against multiple armored targets. Each shot found weak points in the defensive systems that energy weapons couldn't exploit. Joint connections, sensor arrays, power couplings, all vulnerable to precisely placed projectiles that the shields didn't recognize as threats. "The tactical advantages are becoming clear," Commander Vextai observed, making rapid notes. "Silent operation, no energy signature, effective against current defensive technologies. What about range and penetration limits?" Jake pointed toward the far end of the classroom, about 50 meters away. "May I use the wall target, sir?" The instructor activated a standard penetration test panel made of layered armor materials. It was designed to stop everything from kinetic rounds to plasma bursts. Jake selected his heaviest arrow and drew the bow to full extension. The string creaked slightly under the tension, but the weapon held steady. He aimed carefully and released. The arrow struck the test panel with tremendous force. Instead of bouncing off or shattering like kinetic rounds usually did, it punched completely through the first 3 layers of armor, before embedding itself in the 4th. "That penetration exceeds specifications for standard infantry weapons," the commander said, checking his readings. "How is this possible?" "Focused energy transfer," Jake explained. "All the weapon's power gets delivered to a very small point. Energy weapons spread their force over a wider area because of beam dispersion." Kira stepped forward from the group of watching cadets. "Jake, show them the electromagnetic test." Commander Vextai's reptilian features showed confusion. "Electromagnetic test?" Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device that generated electromagnetic pulses, the kind used to disable electronic systems during combat. "Permission to activate an EMP field, sir?" "Granted. This should be interesting." Jake triggered the device. Immediately, several of the alien weapons began malfunctioning. Thrix's plasma cannon shut down completely. Solara's energy blade flickered and died. Even Kira's magnetic accelerator stopped functioning as its electronic components were overwhelmed. "Electronic weapons disabled," Commander Vextai noted. "Cadet Morrison, test your weapon's functionality." Jake knocked an arrow and fired at a practice target. The shot flew true and struck exactly where he had aimed. He followed up with 2 more arrows in rapid succession, both hitting their marks perfectly. Full functionality maintained, Jake reported. The watching cadets began talking excitedly among themselves. The implications were becoming clear to everyone in the room. In a combat situation where electronic warfare knocked out advanced weapon systems, Jake's primitive bow would still be fully operational. Demonstrate rate of fire, the commander ordered. Jake had been hoping for this request. He grabbed a handful of arrows and began shooting as fast as he could draw and release. Arrow after arrow flew across the room, each one striking a different target. His movements became a blur of practiced motion. Knock, draw, aim, release, repeat. In 30 seconds, he had put 15 arrows into 15 different targets with perfect accuracy. Rate of fire equivalent to advanced energy weapons, Commander Vextai observed, but with no need for power cells, cooling cycles, or recharge time. And completely silent, added one of the alien cadets. No muzzle flash, no energy signature. Perfect for stealth operations. Jake demonstrated several more capabilities. He showed how arrows could be retrieved and reused, unlike energy weapon charges. He explained how different materials could create specialized ammunition for specific missions. He even showed how the bow itself could be quickly disassembled and hidden, then rebuilt when needed. What about manufacturing requirements? Asked Thrix, his scientific curiosity overcoming his earlier skepticism. Surely this weapon requires advanced fabrication facilities. Jake smiled and picked up a piece of scrap metal from the floor. Using only basic hand tools, he began shaping it into an arrow point. Everything you need can be made with simple tools and basic materials. No rare elements, no advanced manufacturing, no specialized facilities. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Here was a weapon that could be manufactured anywhere. Required no power source, worked in any environment. Remained effective against advanced defenses. And could be operated by anyone with basic training. Commander Vextai set down his data tablet and looked directly at Jake. Cadet Morrison, where did you learn to construct such an effective weapon system? My grandfather taught me, sir. He learned from his grandfather, who learned from his grandfather. Humans have been building these for about 60,000 years. 60,000 years, the commander repeated slowly. Your species has been refining this technology for 60 millennia? Yes, sir. We never stopped using them, even after we developed more advanced weapons. Sometimes the old ways work better. The alien cadets stared at Jake with new understanding. They had dismissed him as primitive, but now they realized that what they had seen as backwardness was actually sophistication of a different kind. 60,000 years of continuous development and refinement had created something that their advanced civilizations had overlooked. Completely. Commander Vextai picked up one of Jake's arrows and examined it carefully. I believe this demonstration has taught us all something important about the nature of effective weapon design. 3 days later, Jake sat in Commander Vextai's office while the instructor reviewed the complete analysis of the weapon demonstration. Data screens showed comparison charts, efficiency ratings, and tactical assessments from the Academy's top military analysts. The results are quite remarkable. Cadet Morrison, the commander said, his yellow eyes scanning the reports. Your weapon outperformed all others in 7 different categories. Stealth capability, electromagnetic resistance, manufacturing simplicity, ammunition versatility, sustained fire rate, penetration efficiency, and operational reliability. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Thank you, sir. More importantly, you have sparked significant interest among the Academy's Strategic Planning Division. They want to understand how a civilization's primitive weapons could offer such tactical advantages over our current technology. The office door chimed, and Kira entered along with several other cadets from the weapons class. Jake was surprised to see Thrix and Zolara among them, as well as cadets from species he had barely spoken to before. Cadet Morrison, Commander Vextai continued, your classmates have requested permission to learn your weapon construction and operation techniques. Are you willing to provide instruction? Jake looked around at the eager faces surrounding him. These were some of the brightest military students in the galaxy, representatives of civilizations that had mastered space travel, energy manipulation, and technologies beyond human comprehension. And they wanted to learn from him. I'd be honored to teach them, sir. Excellent. We are implementing a new curriculum module based on your demonstration. Fundamental Weapons Principles and Alternative Technology Applications. You will serve as the primary instructor. Over the following weeks, Jake found himself in the unusual position of teaching alien cadets how to build and use bows. The Academy had set up a special workshop area where students could practice crafting weapons from basic materials. The key is understanding the physics. Jake explained to a group of attentive aliens as he demonstrated string attachment techniques. Energy storage, force multiplication, projectile dynamics. These principles work the same way throughout the universe. Thrix proved to be an excellent student. His forearms gave him significant advantages in bow construction, and his species' natural precision made him remarkably accurate. I am beginning to understand why my people abandoned these weapons too quickly, he admitted during one practice session. We assumed technological advancement meant discarding older methods entirely. Zolara had more difficulty with the mechanical aspects, since her species was naturally adapted to energy manipulation. But she discovered that she could enhance arrow accuracy by using her crystalline formations to create perfect balance points. Perhaps the most effective approach combines old wisdom with new capabilities, she suggested. The lessons extended beyond just weapon construction. Jake found himself explaining human approaches to problem solving, resource utilization, and adaptive thinking. His classmates were fascinated by the concept of continuous technological refinement rather than complete replacement. On my world, we develop new weapon systems every few centuries, explained one cadet. We never consider improving our existing tools. Humans kept making their old tools better while also developing new ones, Jake replied. We didn't throw away knowledge just because we learned something new. News of the bow project spread throughout the academy. Senior instructors began visiting the workshop to observe the lessons. Military strategists requested demonstrations for evaluation purposes. Even the academy commandant, a stern Zephyrian general, stopped by to examine Jake's weapons. Cadet Morrison, the commandant said after watching a practice session, your approach to tactical thinking shows considerable merit. Have you considered advanced strategic studies as a career path? I hadn't really thought about it, sir. You should. The galaxy needs officers who can think beyond conventional solutions. The workshop sessions also strengthened Jake's friendships with his alien classmates. Working together on construction projects broke down the barriers that had existed since his arrival at the academy. He was no longer seen as the primitive human trying to catch up with advanced civilizations. Instead, he had become a teacher offering valuable knowledge that complemented their existing skills. Jake, Kira said one evening as they finished cleaning up the workshop, you realize what you've accomplished here, right? I taught some aliens how to make bows. You showed them that human thinking has value, that our perspectives can contribute to galactic civilization instead of just trying to copy everyone else. 6 months later, Jake stood on the graduation platform wearing the crimson sash that marked him as honor graduate of his class. The ceremony was held in the Academy's Grand Amphitheater, with representatives from dozens of worlds in attendance. Cadet Jake Morrison, announced the commandant, for excellence in tactical innovation and cross-species instruction, you are awarded the Medal of Strategic Merit. As Jake accepted the medal, he saw his alien classmates cheering from the audience. Thrix clicked his mandibles in approval. Zolara's crystalline form glowed with pride. Even strict Commander Vexitai showed what might have been a smile on his reptilian features. Your assignment upon graduation, the Commandant continued, will be to the Strategic Innovation Division at Galactic Defense Headquarters. Your mission will be to investigate and develop unconventional tactical solutions for modern military challenges. After the ceremony, Jake found himself surrounded by friends and instructors offering congratulations. The same aliens who had once dismissed him as primitive now competed for his attention and advice. Remember us when you become a famous general? Thrix joked, though his compound eyes showed genuine affection. I want to visit Earth and meet your grandfather, Zolara announced. If he taught you these skills, imagine what other knowledge your world possesses. Commander Vexitai approached as the crowd began to disperse. Cadet Morrison, or rather Lieutenant Morrison, I have a question that has puzzled me since your demonstration. Yes, sir. If your species has been perfecting these weapons for 60,000 years, what other primitive technologies might we have overlooked in our rush toward advancement? Jake smiled, thinking of all the simple, effective solutions that humans had developed over millennia of survival and adaptation. Fishing techniques that could feed armies, building methods that required no advanced materials, navigation systems that worked without electronics, agricultural practices that could transform barren worlds. With respect, sir, I think we're just getting started. As Jake left the academy for his new assignment, he carried with him not just his medals and commendations, but also a set of tools his grandfather had made by hand. Sometimes the old ways really were the best ways, and sometimes showing the galaxy how to build a simple bow could change everything.